Hello, everyone. Happy New Year and welcome back to the Divorce Unplugged podcast. I'm your co-host, Nicole Cox, and you may know me on socials as the Family Law Liaison.
Everybody, Keegan Burke. You may recognize me as Divorceology. Happy New Year, and all of the other holiday elements that are out there for those of you that celebrate different versions of the holiday. It's nice to be back in the saddle, and today's conversation should be fun. I'll start with my disclaimer. Not lawyering, not legal advice, not your lawyer. Really, this is an open conversation around tactic, strategy, and all things divorce.
Yes, nice. And I am an attorney. However, I'm not your attorney, and we're not giving legal advice today. And like Keegan said, we're just talking about real things when you go through a divorce and custody.
Absolutely. And it's really kind of a follow on to our pre New Year conversation around what are you going to do when you get to the new year? Well, we're here. And so, what is your strategy for 2026? And I think the focus here is for those that are considering divorce and or what are the things that you need to think about when divorce is now on the table. And so let's set the caveat that this is under the premise that you're not going to reconcile. Reconciliation isn't on the table. You're going to have to work through divorce. What do you do, right?
Yes, I think one of the biggest things, and when we were talking about this, is you need to find the right attorney if that's exactly what you're looking for. I think an attorney is a really good place to start. Find a coach first and have your coach help you find an attorney and find an attorney and a coach that fits into what you're dealing with. Some specialize in specific areas,
Yeah, I was
and
I was going to back you up and say, well, I think that a strategist or a divorce coach
hmm
is your number one stop.
right.
Because at the end of the day, whether you're a millionaire or a hundredaire, right, it's divorce is expensive, and it's really important to identify your objectives, right? What is it that you want, and then determine how you're going to get there. A lawyer is a very expensive person to do that, and that's generally not their specialty.
Right.
I would even go so far as to argue that an attorney is going to be a waste of time and money if you haven't already done that. I can't tell you how many attorneys I've talked to that argue, hey, I've got 50 cases, and you know your case better than anybody else. And so I think it comes with taking ownership of your situation, working with somebody who is experienced and knows the system and knows the process, knows the high level key points that you need to focus on, and build out your roadmap. I've always used the analogy of divorce is sort of like that. You're at war to some extent, right?
Right.
Hopefully it's not, but many are. But it's like a field full of landmines. And so you need to know how you're going to navigate through the process. You need to be able to prioritize. Some arguments aren't worth chasing, some are. And so the strategist and the coach is going to help you kind of like pull away and get through the weeds so that
Well,
you can
yeah.
focus on the key points,
Yeah.
right?
So the strategist and the coach literally helps you put together your plan.
Right.
And then if it's high conflict, sometimes it is helpful to have an attorney, but also a coach, strategist, however we want to call ourselves, can help you interview your attorneys. And let's keep in mind that every time you talk to an attorney for a consult, it could be up to $500. So
Every
that's
time. Yeah.
expensive. So you really want to know who you're interviewing, and a strategist coach can help you do that.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate for doing kind of like a pre-defined intake, right? So every attorney that you're going to interview has intake paperwork, so they need to understand your situation. But at the same time, right, like they have to understand what they're going to argue for you, but you also want to understand, are they the right attorney for
Right.
you? So I
That's it.
prepare a set of questions. What is it that you are experienced in? What are the typical types of clients you take on, right? What does your team look like? How do you delegate tasks? Who am I actually going to be dealing with?
And what
You
are the
know,
billable hours for each person on your team?
that's right. That's right. And then, it's really kind of that, like, what is it that you really want in your divorce, right? I think that lots of times everybody wishes for amicable divorce, a separation. They hope for, agreement, but it's very easy for those things to fall off the tracks, right? It's like, especially when an attorney is involved, right? Because
Right.
let's say, for example, it's a one-sided perspective. The other side's going to chase attorney's fees. They're going to chase the total pot, right? Remember, if you get into a divorce, each side is looking at the estate as an opportunity to bill against. And so a strategist is going to say, hey, listen, hopefully you will have built out an economic evaluation of, you know, is it worth chasing this thing for $10,000 when it's worth
Right.
five, right? So those are things that you want to get done first and early. But it also comes back even further than that. Like, as you get into your conversations with strategists, you need to think about, where do you sit in your relationship and what does exit look like?
Right. I think you made a good point just a minute ago, too, which was like first and early. Try to settle on absolutely everything you possibly can before you even get an attorney or anyone involved.
Yes, and I would say that with the caveat of, it's sort of like poker, right? Like, you
Yeah.
want to place your bets, but you don't want to show your cards.
Cards.
And it's a tough thing. It's a tough environment because divorce promotes conflict. And so, it's lead with your gut, I think, right? Have a sensible perspective about who you're dealing with. Hopefully you've been married long enough to know the type of person you're going against, if you will. Um, but remember, no matter what, you're not going to get everything you want.
Yeah.
So if you think about it through that lens, it should help you smooth out the process a little bit.
Right. With my clients, I always say, if there's something that you think you can mediate on now, or that you can do a stipulation or some type of a settlement, get as much of it out of the way as you possibly can because you don't want to take all of that into trial.
100%, right? And I think the other thing too that people forget is how expensive for even a basic divorce is, right? With an attorney, if you have an attorney, and generally I'm going to recommend that you have one in some capacity, even if it's limited scope. I actually am a big advocate for limited scope because it keeps them boxed in too.
Right.
But really, it's even inexpensive divorces are in the tens and twenties of thousands of dollars. And so it's, you have to decide, right? Is it closure? Is it stability? Is it, I'm looking to win and burn the boats, right? There are plenty of people that are like, hey, I've been wronged and this is about setting the record straight and getting even. I don't advocate for that, but there are plenty of people who take that position.
I don't. And I think another thing is if you're not starting out, this is a good point. If you're not starting out in your journey of divorce, but you've now come into the year and it's a new year and you're still in family court, it's kind of a whole different animal, right? Because it typically means that you're headed into a trial pretty soon. So then that changes the whole dynamics, really, of everything.
Yeah, and I think ultimately logic, right? It's such a hard thing to find once you get into the process. It's like people forget what logic is.
Mhm.
Everybody does, right? It's like, what are we doing here and why are we doing it? Seems to be if you can back into that perspective, it makes it a lot easier. I think that the family court systems in every state, everywhere, is an absolute scam. So what you can stay in control with and for
Right.
is your best scenario.
Well, and also remember that just because it's a new year, it doesn't reset your case. And now you're coming up on a trial. Now it's just amplifying everything, and it's a little more stressful. It's very intense and stressful.
Absolutely, it is. And then I think too, as you start to kind of plan around it, lots of people get caught up in, I call it intraday noise, right? Like the
Mhm.
communications, the, arguments about haircuts and clothing and
Oh my
what
gosh,
goes here and there.
the
You have to,
haircuts with my client lately. I can't. So funny.
oh, don't get me started on your haircuts.
Yeah. Mm.
But like a reality check for you is, what drives an outcome in a case, right? Like
Right.
there's what's allowable into court. It's what courts care about. These are things that you need to start planning around because what I generally see is people compile all kinds of evidence, all kinds of record keeping, and that's important. We advocate for that. However, a very small sliver of that actually makes it into a courtroom or into your argument,
Right.
because there are really only a set of key arguments that you can make that matter to a courtroom.
Right. Now, you just said something important, which is what I tell my clients. And sometimes I have them, organize documentation under the guise of, okay, what follows through with legal decision making? This would be added to where you would want to argue legal decision making points. This is parenting time points, and this goes under finances. So I think those are three like basic areas that you can start with, huge ways to break it up.
Yeah. Other things to try to avoid, right, that jump out at me is lots of people think, on both sides, right, whether you're the breadwinner or you're the homemaker, right? Homemakers immediately drain accounts and try to create their own reserve, and breadwinners try to take control of the family assets and bank accounts and shutting off cards. And don't
That's
remember,
not good. Do not shut off cards. Never,
no,
ever, ever. A judge
no.
will not be happy.
They
No.
won't be happy, and I think that it's a transparent move, right? It's a vindictive move on both sides, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be aware of what's out there.
Well, also, if you're shutting off cards, are you really thinking of the best interest of your children?
Fair too. That's also a fair point, right?
Yeah.
But like, so I have written down a couple basic things, right? So
Yeah.
evidence is greater than truth, right? So you can have the truth, but if you don't have the evidence, it's
Right.
hard to push the truth. Consistency is greater than emotion, right? So being consistent, being stable,
Yes.
being fair is important, but stability and fairness is more important. And then documentation is much better than explanation. And planning around those things should help you be successful in your process.
And do not react. The other party is going to try to do everything they can to make you look bad and to get a reaction. Do not react.
Yeah, decide what is worth fighting over. Don't over communicate, but be communicative. It's weird, right? It's like a double-edged sword once you get into divorce, because of the environment that it's in. Everything is done under a microscope. Everything is stressful. You want to be.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, remember that anything you say in written form, but even in audio, may be recorded, but certainly becomes evidence from a communication standpoint. So don't be name calling, don't be aggressive,
Right.
don't be controlling. You have to be a decent human being, and this goes back to the whole point. Apply logic and think that somebody else is going to be reading, watching, and interpreting what you're doing.
Also, you said something, be a decent human being. I think what we forget, because people just go into a fight or flight mode, and then it's about winning or losing. And a lot of people just want to win at any cost. But you're going to have to co parent with this person for largely the rest of your life.
Yep.
Okay. So it might be a better idea to try to do it peacefully rather than, like you said, just burn the house down.
Yeah, and as it relates to like choosing those battles, right? It's like, what is material versus what is annoying? What issues actually move the needle on custody, right? Like the clothing and the
So
haircuts don't,
important.
but
Oh my God, I love that you said that because it's so funny and it doesn't. And I have to tell my clients all the time. And it's always the haircuts. I don't know why. Or dance related things or
mhm,
it's stuff like that. It's like I know that it shows that he can't co-parent, but a judge doesn't care.
no.
I mean, the best you could do is show that there was very little communication and maybe that would be a problem moving forward, but it's really not showing that the person can't parent
Yeah,
their
and
children.
the reality is, you're not, for at least initially, you're not getting the arguably you're not getting the best version of the other side ever, right? Like,
Right.
because emotions are high, it's a new experience. You're splitting the household duties. Maybe there was a little bit of offset while you're together because that's how it worked, and now it's going to be equal, right? Like, it's really, in my opinion, what can you concede and live with for your own sanity
Right.
and for simplicity, right?
I like that.
Um,
Said very well. Well
yeah.
said.
And then I think the other point around, and we talked about it briefly, is documentation, right? I think preparing yourself for the things that do move the needle around custody, right? It's, what does caretaking look like? What is the schedule? Making sure you've got that logged. Like, what are they doing? When are they doing? Who's
And
doing?
I have a point because we do like logs, But here's something interesting. I have one client that shares the log with the co-parent. So now one log goes to one house, one log goes the other, and now we've just got somebody saying no, it didn't go that way, or it causes a little bit of a rift. Do you know what I'm
I,
saying?
I, I absolutely do,
I
right?
do not think you need to take one log back and forth to the other parent. Keep your own log.
Yeah, keep your own log. And remember, if you are going to socialize something from your experience, make sure it's worth socializing, right? Um, because is the other person just going to dig their heels in and look for a way to argue it? And are
Right.
you exposing your position and creating unnecessary conflict by, maybe your intent is good, but the outcome is not as beneficial as you hope it to be.
Well, it's not as productive.
Right. Another one. This came from a therapist years ago that I really love this guidance, and it was if the kids are saying things negative about the other household, or share an experience that obviously fire coming out of your eyeballs and steam coming out of your ears, and you can't believe that that's happening. Remember, they're sharing with you in a kind of what they would consider a safe environment. So
Right.
don't rush to go throw them under the bus. So and so said, because when they leave you, they've got to go to that household, and you can imagine the pressure and the influence and the coercion that they're going to experience, and even in many cases, the punishment for having said it. Right. And so you lose that trust with your children. So really tread lightly. And I guess what the therapist pointed out was, if you share it, only share it with the expectation, right, and evaluate this, that there will be a change in outcome based on what you share. Otherwise, log it, keep it, save it.
Interesting. I agree with that. Yeah. And it would be something very important to change the outcome. So
Right,
very
right.
few things need to be shared.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's one of those unique situations where it's like, hey, you just said something that I don't like, but I know you said that to me in confidence, right?
Right.
But things that do play a role in custody, because communication can be used to establish, aggression, control, in some cases DV, right, of
Right.
sorts. Making sure your communication is clean. We talk about it all the time.
Right.
Less is more, right? If it doesn't require a response, don't respond.
Right.
If you need to set the record straight, I have setting the record straight is a unique one, because there are arguments to be made on both sides, right? One side of the table is you need to memorialize, right, or set
Yeah.
the record straight, and you don't want to leave what lawyers call adoptive admission on the table, right? If they say, well, so and so happened or something happened, and you don't respond or rebut it, then that's adoptive admission. At the same time, you don't want to get into the weeds of arguing, innocuous things, or
Yeah.
just be spending all of your communications correcting the other side.
Well, exactly. And like I've said 100 times, and I will say it 100 more in this coming year, stick to the needs and development of the children when you're communicating, and stay with facts. That's it. Clear
Yep.
and concise facts, needs and development of the children.
Yep, completely. The other one that I tend to think about with folks is, we all hope for the best, but you have to plan for the worst, right? You have to anticipate escalation, especially if you decide on a topic that, hey, this is the hill I'm going to die on, and this is where I'm going to stand my ground. It could turn into that high conflict scenario can spin up very quickly, very easily. And so if you haven't planned around it, you haven't
Yeah.
looked at all the things that might be on the table, you should do that. And then we talked about it a little bit, but how do professionals play in your case, right? We talk about the fact that neither of us are big advocates for
Yeah.
professionals, gals, or, minors counsel, for a number of reasons, right? But attorneys obviously play a role, strategists play a role. The therapy in some cases makes sense, right? It doesn't in others. There are plenty of scenarios where therapy doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mediation, right? If it's a private mediator, I think that's a great way to go. Private judges, again, staying out of the system and trying to find middle ground, recognizing that you may not win or get everything that you want,
Right.
right? I think just in general, holding yourself accountable. I think being accountable to yourself and to the things that are important to you, core values. Have a network of folks, people that you can turn to, but remember, friends and family aren't the best place for advice.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you said that because they can make things so much worse. And
Mhm.
that's where, once again, a coach, a strategist comes in, somebody that's a third party neutral that, can keep you thinking on a reasonable track. Like, stay in your lane and be reasonable because everybody has something, friends, family, there's always ulterior motives, and
Mhm.
listening to them can definitely cause problems.
100% agree. And certainly don't engage these other people to get involved in your situation, right? Don't use them as proxies to make arguments or to communicate. Be accountable for yourself, hold your own ground. And to your point of having a coach, right? Like lots of people, and I see it all the time, lots of people vent all of these innocuous intraday noise and drama and haircuts and clothing to their attorney. That is an insane expense. And by the way, if an attorney's loaded down in cases, they start to kind of like it's like the boy who cried wolf, right? You're wasting their time on stuff that they know doesn't matter. Okay, yeah, they're going to bill you for it, but they also go, okay, my client is sort of annoying and
Mhm.
they aren't focused on the things that are most important. And this is just going to be a long winded case, right?
Right.
And so use your strategist, your coach to kind of work through, hey, this happened. Do I do anything? Do I not?
Which,
And
to
move on.
your point, is exactly why attorneys should want their clients to have a coach so that coaches can keep them on the same track, like in their lane, and not have to worry about all those little tiny emails, phone calls, and things like that.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. And so I think ultimately, for the new year, if you think about this divorce, oh, by the way, divorce isn't fast, right?
No.
For example, California has a 6 month waiting period. So even if it's like the simplest, you have no assets, no income, no split up, no kids, you got to wait 6 months. So get on the horse, get it filed, and you can work out some of the details along the way if it is going to be amicable. But ultimately, you really want to be planning around the next 12 months, right? You could have a hearing in 3 months and then the next hearing set 3 or 4 months later. It doesn't move fast. So
I mean, I have
plan for the
clients.
long game.
Yeah, I have clients that have been waiting for 2 and 3 years.
Yeah. I've seen divorces go well into 10 years on what should
Right.
be a year. So make sure you have that plan. Again, to me, that's a coach thing. And listen, there are plenty of intelligent folks who can do this on their own, right? They can do their own planning. Maybe they're engineers, maybe they're smart, maybe they understand what's important or what's not. Do it, right? Whether you use somebody professionally to do it or not, you need to go through the effort of understanding what the next 12 months and maybe even 24 looks like. And I would argue that if you don't have economics baked into that,
Right.
then you're either going to run out of money or you're going to spend a lot more than you want to.
Big surprise. Yes.
All right. So I think from that perspective, the new year brings a planning requirement, right?
That's
We
exactly
have
it.
to plan. If you haven't planned, get a plan. If you are in it and you need a plan, make one, build one, reset yourself, calibrate the next 12 months, and go into this new year in a direction that you can see success, not just through the divorce, but post divorce.
Right. Also, take some time out for yourself. Know that this will be stressful. Definitely take time for self care. And if you need to, find a coach, a strategist to help you build a plan.
100%. Couldn't have said it better. Any closing thoughts?
Those were mine.
Okay.
Find a
Um,
coach, get a
yeah.
strategist, plan.
My closing thought is cliche. If you don't have a plan, it's a plan to fail.
There you go. I like that a lot. Okay,
Um,
everyone.
Thanks for listening. Like, listen, subscribe, do all the things. We appreciate all of you. And at some point here in the near future, we'll have a Q&A.
See you soon.
Take care.